I'm doing this video for a second time. I just went off on a rant, a really bad rant. Boy, do I have a lot of bitterness from repairs and eBay stuff. All right, in order to get the capacitor underneath, which I'll show you in a second, you have to remove this capacitor that sits on top. Okay, you have to remove this. Let's see what's in the frame. And this stupid stack up here guides a tool down to the little tuning cap. Okay, that's all that's for. You have to remove this, and I had it removed. I was all done, but then I have to take it back off. 2 bolts that hold this coil down, and you have to unsolder a wire. That'll allow you to remove the capacitor that's here, that's ganged with the front one. Okay, it's ganged using a linkage. Okay, it's not a back and forth linkage, it's a circular linkage. I guess you could call it a coupler. We'll call it a coupler. Okay, and this has all been greased and everything over the years, and people tend to grease the wrong thing. I want to tell you that right now, as a repairman. And they tell you how great it worked. You know, I greased it and it worked great for a week, but now, yeah, and then you get to really fix it. But here's what we're dealing with. This blob over here, hardened grease. Up in here, hardened grease. You got to clean that all off. You might even have to scrape it with a razor blade. And there's a worm gear that turns this large gear, and it gives you mechanical advantage, but it also makes this is a capacitor's say it's a 90 degree or 180 back and forth. This really gears it down, so it probably takes let's say 100 turns to go from one end to the other. That's what you want when you're tuning up a receiver or a transmitter. And I'm looking at this gear. I'm looking at the spring. It's still on. Okay, this gear is a split gear. See the spring? There's two gears pancaked. You can see my long nails. They're pancaked. And then this gear pulls the teeth together, and you preset it like 3 teeth, whatever it is. It's not in the manual. So I'm just going to try cleaning this without taking it apart. I'm not going to get too crazy. All right. All I know is I got to get rid of the old grease. Use some Q-tips. Use some alcohol. Double check everything. Re-grease it with my, I think it's called Super Lube. And but this is for anti-backlash. In other words, by having these gears preset against each other, there's no play. Okay? Because a worm gear is notorious for having a little bit of play up into there's a worm and a worm gear. Okay? And sometimes there's play. And that's how they take it out. Military always, even the better receivers, like the Nationals, have these split gears in them. And you also need to drop a drop of oil in the back of the capacitor and in the front. 1 drop of oil, you get it in the right spot. That's all you need. And make it a thin oil. Motor oil, do not use 3-in-1. And I'll refix this, but I want to show you it's not that easy. And there is some mildew on the parts, which is to be expected for things that sit in the cellar, in a box, in a puddle of water. And I always tell you that, and that's what you get on eBay. And it's funny thing is, there's a receiver just like the one I bought, or a transmitter just like the one I bought, and it's exactly the same shape. All the parts in it have the same amount of oxide and crap inside, and it's a different seller, but it's the same part of the country. So it's possible the guy has a second name up on eBay. But here's the roller inductor. This is believe it or not, this is a contact. Now, the geniuses out there go, just spray it with deox. Now I'm going to show you. I'm going to do this on camera, and this is an old ink eraser, and let's see how bad this is. This is what I use to clean stuff. All right, I don't use deox. I don't use sandpaper. Okay, and I'll do a little more work then, and this does come up. I don't know if you can notice how much cleaner it is. Okay, these pieces will come apart and they'll be restored like brand new. I don't know about this. I might have to make a piece of eraser to go in the center in the hub and clean it. But there's a hub here, and this outer cone right here, believe it or not, it's going to take a little more scrubbing there, huh? All right, it's starting to get shiny. All right, see it? That's a contact. This point has to stay in contact with this rod, and then this rod's in the groove next to the coil on the output coil that I'm missing. Okay, it's called a roller tuner, a roller coil, roller tuner. Anyway, that's what I'm missing on this radio. But I just wanted to show you, you know, what they don't show you on the other videos. And I told you on the last video, I went looking to see if anybody showed how to do those flower pot capacitors. And one guy drills a series of holes. He's using a torch on it. You got to see it. It's actually, he actually thinks he's doing a good job. Okay. And I'm like, you know, when I sat there and took one apart for the first time, I'm like, all I have to do is grind the lip and that piece. And then that piece came off. And then I'm like, okay, now I got to lift the mica off the beeswax. And I know there's going to be some suction there or some sticking. It's going to be stuck. I drilled a hole in the opposite corner, slowly pried it up with a sewing needle, and that was it. I went, this is it. This is going to work. And go look at how other people have done it. It's really, one guy made a circuit board. He destroys the mica, and then he sort of makes a circuit board. And these videos have no follow-up video. Okay? I go through the videos step by step, or through the radios, through the transmitter. And even one of the videos I took down, I bought one of those cheap component checkers. All right, one of these. And it had an old program in it, and it wasn't working right. I actually made it connectors and everything. I spent days on it to reprogram it. I actually found a guy. I found the software. And I reprogrammed it. Because the thing's $9. Something like that. But I must have put $500 worth of time into it, or more, and I got it programmed. I didn't want to throw the thing out, and I was afraid if I order another one, I'm going to get another one with the wrong program. But that's how I roll. I stay with something to where it becomes really painful. Now, there's a matching unit just like this up in the front of the radio, but it also has a gear set for the front, and that all has to be taken apart. And now I know that basically, to work on this radio, you should take some pictures and take it totally apart, clean it, and then put it back together and test your parts as you're doing it. Okay, the way I did it, it was going fine until I had to get this out. And those two bolts were underneath. I said, come on. But that's how it works. Okay, two of the bolts were under the capacitor. And this capacitor, I didn't want to move that. That capacitor is set close to where it should operate at. It hasn't been moved. And this is the oscillator inside the you call it the VFO or the oscillator on the unit. And you have a coil and you have a capacitor. And to get the scale on the dial calibrated, you have to set the low end first, then the high. I don't want to do all that. Okay? I want to put it together and just have to be able to only have to touch it up, and I'm very careful. And you will, like I said, you will see mildew on the bottom things. I use a little bit of alcohol on a cloth and I clean it up. I clean the mildew off, but that's very common, you know. Especially this summer around here, I've got mildew on stuff in my house. It's been really humid and hot. We broke the record 3 years in a row. We broke records for the hottest summer. But don't forget my tip. Anytime you're cleaning anything brass for a radio or that, get yourself an ink eraser. Do not use sandpaper. Do not use bright dip. This only takes off the oxide. Okay? This is better than sandpaper. The other thing that works pretty good is Scotch-Brite. In certain cases, you can use that. That's a little more harsher. But this eraser, got to remember, this erases paper. So it's fairly gentle, but it works. You just do a little bit of scrubbing, and you can take this bar off. It has two bolts in it, bolts and nuts, bolts. Oh, it's threaded. Okay, the bar itself is threaded, and there's a screw that goes into it, or a bolt that goes into it, and it's got Gliptol on the back of it. I think that's it. I hope I did it good. Did I go off on a rant? Oh, man. Oh, I remembered somebody I worked with. They hired this guy to oil the machines, and he'd sit and talk to the girls, and he'd walk around, and there was no oil in the machines, and he walked around, and you start hearing a girl go, my machine is running slow. And like, how could your machine run? You're looking over a synchronous motor. What it was is he was going around with an empty oil can, and a couple of the machines seized up. And then we had to take them apart, and oh, what a nightmare. And he sat there. He didn't help us. He just sat there going, I'm sorry, Jerry. I'm sorry. He kept saying it over and over and over. And I would walk away, and I went over to the boss. I said, can you get that guy away from us? Yeah, he's pretty bad. Yeah, I'd have him fired, but he didn't get fired. I kept him. But oh, I think that was the worst nightmare of having 3 techs pulling a machine apart, long shaft down to a long bushing, and we had to use all kinds of sprays and heat and cold to get that shaft out of that bushing. It was a big long bushing, and the machine couldn't have any play in it, type of thing. And that's when you see really long bushings and really tight shafts. And man, if you don't oil them, they seize up, and it's almost like magic, the way the shaft gets stuck in there. And you know how easy that shaft turns in a bushing when it's new. And then when it gets seized up, you're like, oh man. And then the machinery we were working on, there were no replacement parts. They were actually from the old Edison lamp company. They were machines that had flames and stuff for doing glass work. But oh yeah, I went into a rant on that guy. I know I would have been banned on eBay on YouTube if I would have put that one up. I think that's it. Like I said, I want to show you the actualities on these radios and stuff. And I know people buy ones that are in better shape, and then they have to spray deox on stuff that's already worked. It's just they've never had to work on a radio that's really hard or really in bad shape. And there are guys, if you go on the internet and a few YouTubes, they take a radio totally apart. They send the chassis out and have it replated. Those guys, I have my hat off to them. I don't go that far. I will clean the chassis up with a Dremel tool with a spinning eraser. They used to make these spinning rubber bits, and you could buff out the rust. That's how I always did it. And those bits got to be pretty expensive if you could find them. But that's what I was using. Or I actually used the old elbow grease and an eraser. Okay? I think that's it. All right, that's it.